Welcome back to Wealth Discovery, where we disclose the hidden truths behind the world's most crucial stories. Today we will dive in the topic related to radioactive and our ocean. What if I told you that Japan is about to unleash a massive amount of radioactive water into the ocean, and that this could have devastating consequences for the marine life, the environment, and the human health around the world? Sounds like a conspiracy theory, right? Well, it's not. It's the reality that Japan is facing right now. In this video, we will explore how Japan got into this situation, what it plans to do with the radioactive water, and what the risks and impacts are for the global community. But before we dive into that, make sure you hit the subscribe button and the bell icon to get notified of our latest videos. Part 1: The Origin of the Radioactive Water. The origin of the radioactive water can be traced back to 2011, when a massive earthquake and tsunami hit Japan, causing one of the worst nuclear disasters in history. The disaster damaged the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant, which had 6 reactors. 3 of them suffered meltdowns, releasing large amounts of radioactive material into the air, land, and sea. To prevent further damage and overheating, the plant operators had to pump water into the reactors to cool them down. However, this water became contaminated with radioactive substances, such as cesium, strontium, and tritium. Some of this water leaked into the ground and the sea, while some of it was collected and stored in tanks on site. Over the past decade, Japan has accumulated more than 1.3 million tons of radioactive water in more than 1,000 tanks at the Fukushima plant. This is enough to fill 500 Olympic-sized swimming pools. The water has been treated to remove most of the radioactive elements, except for tritium, which is difficult to separate from water. Tritium is a radioactive isotope of hydrogen that emits low-energy beta particles that can be harmful if ingested or inhaled in large quantities. The problem is that Japan is running out of space to store the radioactive water. The plant operator, TEPCO, says that it will run out of tank capacity by late 2022. Therefore, Japan has decided to release the water into the sea, starting from this year. Part 2: The plan to release the radioactive water. Japan's plan to release the radioactive water into the sea has been approved by its own government and by the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, which is the UN's nuclear watchdog. They claim that the plan is safe, and that the impact on people and the environment will be negligible. According to Japan's plan, the water will be diluted with seawater until the tritium concentration is below 1,500 becquerels per liter, which is the national standard for drinking water. The water will then be released gradually over 30 years, starting from this year, 2023. The total amount of tritium that will be released is estimated to be about 860 trillion becquerels, which is equivalent to about 0.02% of the natural tritium in the world's oceans. Japan says that releasing the water is a necessary step in the long and costly process of decommissioning the Fukushima plant, which could take up to 40 years. It also says that releasing the water is a common practice in other nuclear facilities around the world, such as in France, Canada, and South Korea. However, Japan's plan has faced strong opposition and criticism from its neighbors and from environmental groups. They argue that releasing the water poses unacceptable risks and impacts for the marine life, the food chain, and the human health in the region and beyond. They also accuse Japan of violating international law and human rights by dumping radioactive waste without proper consultation or consent. Part 3: The Risks and Impacts of the Radioactive Water Release. So, what are the risks and impacts of Japan's radioactive water release? And how could it trigger a global catastrophe? Well, there are several possible scenarios that could explain this. One scenario is that the radioactive water could contaminate or damage the marine ecosystem, in the Pacific Ocean. The Pacific Ocean is home to more than half of the world's fish species, as well as many other marine animals, plants, and microorganisms. It also provides food, income, and livelihood for millions of people around the world. If the radioactive water affects or harms any part of this ecosystem, it could have serious consequences for its biodiversity, productivity, and sustainability. Another scenario is that the radioactive water could affect or harm human health through exposure or consumption. The main route of exposure or consumption is through seafood, which could accumulate or concentrate tritium or other radioactive substances in their tissues or organs. People who eat contaminated seafood could ingest or inhale tritium or other radioactive substances, which could cause cancer, genetic mutations, or other diseases. The risk of exposure or consumption could be higher for people who live near the coast or who depend on seafood as a major source of food or income. A third scenario is that the radioactive water could trigger or escalate a geopolitical conflict or crisis in the region or in the world. The Pacific Ocean is not only a source of life, but also a source of dispute and tension for many countries and territories. There are many unresolved issues and conflicts over sovereignty, territory, resources, and security in the Pacific Ocean, such as the South China Sea dispute, the Taiwan Strait crisis, and the North Korea nuclear threat. If the radioactive water affects or harms any of these interests or parties, it could spark or worsen a confrontation or a war that could have global implications. So, these are some of the possible risks and impacts of Japan's radioactive water release. But are they real? Or are they exaggerated? And what can be done to prevent or mitigate them? These are some of the questions that we will try to answer in our next video. So stay tuned for more updates on this topic. With that said, thanks for watching and until next time.